Hello and welcome back to the Azeem Digital Asks Podcast. Really excited to bring you this topic today and to bring you my guest today, the incredible Ashwin Balakrishnan. So firstly, my friend, thank you very much for joining. I am just going to do a little bit of a blurb as the usual. As you know by now, we're probably 4 or 5 episodes deep into video, so you can watch this on Spotify or on YouTube as well for my regular listeners. If you're really interested in seeing our beautiful faces, please hit us up and watch it. Also, you may have noticed that there's not been an episode for a few weeks, and that is purely on me. So let me just very quickly explain. Those of you who know me personally know that I enjoy exercise. I decided to exercise that hard and that vigorously that I sent my body into shock twice within a week. So I needed to take some time off, but I'm back ready to go, well rested and very much looking forward to this. So that's that. One last thing, bit of admin before I carry on. A massive thank you to my friends at Content King who sent me this t-shirt and the incredible socks that they've got. I am a huge advocate of their stuff. Purely because it's ultra comfortable in the gym. So thanks very much for that. Please do check them out. Onto the show, onto meat and bones. We're talking about how content is way more than SEO blogs. Ashwin, my friend, hello.
Azeem, thanks for having me on.
One thing I didn't mention is if you're listening or watching to this, please drop him a message and note the dedication of this incredible human being, because it is ultra late in the day for him thanks to time zones. So I'm really, really pleased and grateful that you've given up some of your day to be with me, my friend. How's it going?
I'm doing great. It's honestly like a little surreal for me to be recording this with you, because I've been listening for months and months, and I'm just super happy to be here and share what I can.
That means a lot to me, man. Thank you very much. You're somebody who has been on my list of people to meet virtually and hopefully in person once it's safe to do so. I've got a lot of time and a lot of respect for you, so I'm very, very grateful to have you on the show. I'm mindful I've done a lot of talking, so I am going to shut up now because this episode is all about you, my friend. So before we get into the meat and bones of our episode, I would love for you to do a short introduction to yourself so people know what an awesome human being you are.
Yeah, I've been a copywriter for about 12 years. I started working in publishing. Actually started by interviewing politicians, athletes, high-profile individuals, and I just wasn't satisfied with that after a while. So I was like, let me try advertising. I grew up in the U.S., so the big thing for me as a kid was the Super Bowl, but not for the game, for the commercials. So I was like, I've loved commercials my whole life. Let me go into advertising. And I did. I was agency side for a good 4.5 years. And then it just got way too much. I got married. I just couldn't do the 50, 60-hour weeks, the late nights, all of that stuff. So I was like, let me go in-house. About 5 years ago, I made the switch to B2B SaaS. An opportunity came my way that I never expected. I was like, let's see where that goes. I took it, and I switched from being a copywriter to a content marketer. I've fortunately been given chances since then to keep my copy skills up to scratch. But these days, I like to think of myself as a narrative builder. So if it uses words and has a story, I can write it. Decks, scripts, website, blogs, all of that stuff. So I'm involved across the board. And now as the head of marketing at Optmyzr, I also look into stuff like ad placements, partnerships, that kind of thing, beyond just content and copy.
Love that. So already listeners and or viewers will know this is set to be a great episode. I'm really, really looking forward to learning a lot from you. So we titled the episode, How Content is Way More Than SEO Blog. So my first question naturally is, if that's the case, if content is way more than SEO blogs, how do you define it?
So I look at content the same way that TV channels and streaming services look at content. It's just programming. The only difference is instead of, a very wide group of people, you're, speaking from the perspective of B2B SaaS, you're speaking to a very niche segment, a group of people who do one thing and have a certain set of priorities and challenges, right? But ultimately, the theory behind it is the same, right? So you go to Netflix for certain shows and movies, right? You go to Disney Plus for all of the Marvel stuff and the Disney classics. If you think about it the same way, when you're building out your content plan and your content strategy, why should people come to your site or wherever you publish your content, right? When people think of content, some of the first things that come to mind are like blogs, obviously for SEO, but also white papers, social media, emails, case studies, and all of those are valid, right? I'm not saying that's not great content. If you do a good job with it, it can be, but content can be so much more. So when I think of content, I think of things like websites, like a really strong homepage, really catchy landing pages for different audiences. I think of a podcast with a really unique twist. I think of a YouTube channel where you provide more like tutorials, instruction, things like that. One of the biggest applications of content that I'm involved with is the nurture campaign that people get when they sign up for a free trial. That's like a really great opportunity for us to work with people and actually show them what we can do for them in terms of supporting their business, supporting their aspirations. And I think a lot of content marketers just bypass those opportunities to be involved with the customer. So, moving on from there, like customer education, presentations, virtual events, all of that is content. It's the stuff that people come back to your company for. They want to consume, they want to read, they want to watch. I think ultimately all these things, what they have in common is they start with words, and those words take shape in different ways. So if you look, a couple of examples of like businesses and people who are doing content that are more than just SEO and blogs, Podia, they have a fantastic video channel. They're all about like helping content creators, and they have amazing tutorials. They have really strong guides. They have really strong support material. Then we have, so Hiba Amin is one of my favorite content marketers. When she was with Hypercontext, she basically built the whole thing off templates for managers and user-generated content, right? So it was not just blogs, right? These are all examples of people who went further than just the SEO blogs and the website and the white papers. If you think of like your favorite YouTube creators, right? Mr. Beast or whoever it might be, you like them because there's something unique about them, but at the same time, they're relatable because they share traits with you. So if you're trying to develop a good content plan for your business, that's who you want to be for your audience. You want to be a creator. So think of what they want. I think a lot of times marketers, we get caught up in what our peers and colleagues think we should do, but always do what your audience needs and wants. So if they respond to blogs, go ahead, pursue the blogs. But there's like a whole world of content out there that's more than just SEO blogs and audiences that you can reach.
I love that. That is such an incredible answer. Thanks very much for sharing that. Very detailed as well. I'm listening to you speak, and I'm thinking that not many people think like that. Not many people have that mindset and approach to looking outside of just pushing out blogs. Now, I don't know whether that's naivety or whether it's just comfort or what they've already known and just sticking to the same thing, but not many people think like that. So I guess what I'm getting to is, if that's the case and people are just literally constantly pushing out blogs, what are your thoughts on marketers who are literally just constantly publishing blogs as part of their content strategy?
Again, I would say if it's working for you, more power to you. Keep pushing. But at the same time, I would recommend looking a bit beyond that, right? So if we take the example of a business that's publishing, like, say, 2 blogs a week, and they're getting great traffic, they're getting good business out of it. If that's working for you, think of all of the people who would love to read your blogs, but maybe they just don't have the time to like spend on 2,000 words a week. Right? If you take that same blog and you republish it as a podcast or a YouTube video or a Twitter thread, right? You're immediately capturing a lot more attention. I think it was the Better Cloud State of SaaS Ops study from last year said that the average company uses 80 SaaS products, right? So giving you a more personal reference, my marketing team, we have about 10 apps that we use on a regular basis. So in addition to using these apps, I do like their brands, right? So there's a reason I gravitated towards them rather than one of their competitors. So if we publish, if all 8 to 10 of those apps published a 2,000 word blog post a week and left it at that, I don't have the time. Even my team put together, we don't have the time to read all of those every week. But what we do have the time to do is watch like a 5-minute video, right? We have the time to read a micro article. One of the biggest things that I advocate for is if you're going to publish a blog post and you think a blog post is the best way, it doesn't always have to be 2,000, 3,000 words, right? 500, 600 words. You can still pick like one problem, put it in one perspective, like get one angle to that problem and offer a solution in 500 words. And maybe you're not going to rank number one for a super high volume keyword, but what you can actually do is pick that up, distribute it really well, and then get more people to share it. And that happens much more frequently if your content is snackable, as they say. So like small videos, micro articles. The other thing I advocate for is passive consumption. So audio streams, podcasts, little mini clips, things that people can listen to while they do something else. These are all really good ways to take existing content, repurpose it into formats that make it a lot more digestible for people. So as I said, it's not like blogging is completely a bad thing. There's always opportunities, especially with low volume keywords that you think might surge in the future. Microblogging for your customers specifically, rather than just like a top of funnel audience. These are all great ways to look at a blog in a different light.
Again, another brilliant answer. I do not disagree with anything that you said there. And again, the whole point about mindset and thinking, the way you described the fact that, your team doesn't have so much time to read 10 different tools, blogs. In my experience in marketing, not many people think like that and put it like that. People are very siloed. I guess probably my 2 pence is that's probably why a lot of people are still stuck, certainly over here on last click attribution, but that's a different topic for a different day. I think some of the things you discussed there are, the foundations or parts of a content strategy, and I think it would be remiss of us not to discuss that. So I would love to hear it directly from you, certainly with the way that you've approached these first couple of questions. I'm really interested to learn. What does a good content strategy look like to you?
I think I'm going to go with the marketing cop-out with it depends, right? A good strategy is whatever works for your customers and people who could be your customers. So there's a really cool story from earlier in my career. So the first SaaS marketing job that I worked at, it was an HR tech company. And the really weird thing about this company was that everything was led by the sales team, right? So marketing was not tasked with anything to do with brand, right? We weren't tasked with anything to do with improving awareness. Everything was about leads. Everything was about getting demos. There was no funnel, so to speak. So we basically had to work with that setup. And very fortunate for me is that my VP of marketing and the VP of sales, they'd worked together previously many times. So despite this slightly chaotic setup, they were actually able to find a winning solution. So what we actually did was we used 2 pieces of content that most people would never really think of. So the first thing was an ROI calculator, where people could actually see, like, they could input the quote that we gave them, and then based on like how much they were paying their recruiters, how many recruiters were on their team, they could actually calculate how long it would take for the software to end up paying for itself. So we used that. And then we also used a Gartner briefing. So we approached Gartner and we actually set time up with one of their product specialists, walked them through this new platform we were creating, like top to bottom. And then Gartner actually went out and advocated for us. So using that one piece of content and a partnership, we ended up going from like, I think it was like 400,000 in pipeline. And then 3 quarters later, it was like 7.5 million in pipeline. So that completely turned things around. I think it worked for us because we did 3 things. Number one, we met the audience where they were, right? Not in terms of like a physical location, but where they were in the buying stage. So we only went after people who had already shown an interest in solving this problem. We knew that, there was no point building awareness right from the top. So everybody who didn't want to do recruiting the old way, we only spoke to them. We went to the medium and the channel that they gravitate towards, right? So it was really big in HR at the time for conferences to be where a lot of business happens. So we're like, how can we actually get our foot in the door? Let's partner with Gartner and let's have them run their conference stuff for us. And the third thing we did is we started talking about things they actually care about at that point in the journey. So instead of talking so much about us and what we do and what our platform is like, we focused really heavily on how we solve the problem that they were going through, rather than all the cool bells and whistles about, software architecture and stuff like that. So in a nutshell, that's what I would say. Like, meet your audience where they are, in a medium or a channel that they actually use, and talk about the stuff that's important to them. And your content strategy may and should include long-term awareness building for people who are not yet ready to buy. So it's not all going to be like people who are in market for a solution. You also want to create content for people who might not even know that a problem exists. Brendan Hufford from SEO for the Rest of Us, he has a fantastic model that we use on our team, which is basically like different stages within awareness. So are they aware of the problem? Are they aware of the solution? Are they aware of your product? And basically making sure that each piece of content meets them wherever they are in that awareness stage. The other thing I would say is, like, you don't have to make it all work-related stuff. Because of my publishing background, I've seen a lot of success with human interest stories, even in B2B marketing. So like doing interviews of prominent people within the industry that you serve, actually telling stories of businesses, of individuals, of agencies, that can really bring in a lot of people. So that brings in your top of funnel audience. And then if you make sure the navigation on your site is good, you can direct them to other pieces of content, maybe a video, maybe a case study, whatever flow works for you. But that's a great way to pull people in. I think the most important thing is that your content needs to have character. It needs to be an extension of the creator. If you try to separate content from creator, that's when it becomes really bland. And I think what we're seeing in the industry now is this big surge towards propping up creators and having their personal brands intertwined with the company's brand. I think that's working for a lot of people. I think that's a great way for a lot of people who aren't testing that. It's definitely something that they should consider.
Solid gold. Cannot disagree with any of that. I meant to mention this earlier, but the resources and tools and guides and people, Brendan here, are incredible people. Definitely share some links with me, and I'll make sure to put them in the show notes so that people can access them. We are flying through this, and time is absolutely flying. But I want to take a step back to something that I asked you earlier. So we're at this point in the episode now where people are listening to this and they have absorbed what I believe to be visual and audio content gold from yourself. We call the episode How Content is Way More Than SEO Blog. So if somebody's listening to this right now who's still publishing blog content and they're at this point in the episode, what advice would you give to them?
I think if you look at blogs, right, especially if you work in an industry that's really saturated in SEO, writing a blog can be a lot like putting a message in a bottle, throwing it in the ocean, and hoping that your friend on the other side of the ocean finds it eventually, right? What people should be focusing on when they create a blog is not so much the blog itself, but how you get people to the blog or how you take the blog to people. In other words, distribution. So first piece of advice, I would go back and say, try to diversify. Even if you can't like find a new angle to a podcast or a YouTube channel, at least repurpose the content that you do have, right? And repurposing isn't just taking it, putting it in a video format and presenting it the same way, but making sure that the information that you present is video friendly or audio friendly, right? If you write a blog post that relies heavily on visuals, it may not translate really well to a podcast. So take the core essence of the ideas you discuss and then have a podcast about that topic, right? So you have to repurpose for that medium. You can't just like take the same blog and, throw it in as a podcast script. If you do have the bandwidth to go beyond just blogs, I would say, explore different things. One of the toughest things I've experienced is actually convincing other people that these new channels, these new mediums are worth it. So run small little pilot programs. If you think video is a format that you want to play with, do like 2 or 3 small videos, distribute those, see how it works. If you can find traction, then you can go back to your team and say, yeah, we should invest more in this. 3 videos got us this kind of reaction. If we improve the production value, the distribution, the reach, we could amplify it to, whatever your theory is. The other piece of advice I would say is if you're sticking with blogs, at least find a way to make your blog stand out. And the easiest way that I've achieved this in the past is to take a stance, usually something very different from what everybody else is saying, sometimes even controversial. But if you take a stance and you express an opinion and you commit fully to that opinion, a lot of people will start to associate that idea with you and the company that you work for. So I think all businesses should have an idea on how things should be done. And I think from there, you can kind of build a content strategy around that. But without something that makes you different, unique, special, whatever you want to call it, it's really difficult to stand out.
Again, I'm finding it very hard to disagree with anything that you're saying there. And I'm going to say it now before I forget to do it at the end of the show. And anyone who's listened to this, including yourself, my guest, Ashwin, if this right here, this episode, and already what I've heard from you so far has really solidified why I started this podcast, because I am learning so much from you already, and I'm positive that the listeners will too. So I'm conscious to make sure that that continues, and I'm going to shut up after asking you this question. You mentioned in your last answer there about distribution and looking at other channels. So my question is, how would you approach getting buy-in from, let's say, the C-suite or senior management to produce other content that is not blogs? How would you do that?
Yeah, if you work for a business that has blogged extensively but never really branched out, it can be really tough to convince senior management that they should extend from their comfort zone. In my 12 years, getting buy-in for new projects is probably the single toughest part of every single job I've had. The easiest way, like I said, in my experience, has been run a test, have data to support your hypothesis, and then present that data. C-suite typically responds really well to business metrics, and if you can present a business narrative. So just saying like, oh, we got 50,000 impressions from this doesn't really translate to much. But if you can show, like, especially if you have a plan for what you do after you get those impressions, if you can portray it as like, all right, so if we get 50,000 impressions from 3 videos of moderate quality, if we did high quality videos and we got 500,000 impressions, and we captured some of those people in as emails, and we continue to send content to them over a period of time, and then gave them an offer, gave them a deal, eventually nurtured them towards using the product, I believe that, this investment could lead to some kind of revenue, right? That's a much easier way to get buy-in than just saying 500,000 people will know about us or 500,000 people will have watched our content. The important thing when you do this is make sure that your work culture actually supports it. I know, unfortunately, a lot of marketers work in environments where if you do anything without permission, there's a real chance you might even lose your job. So make sure that your environment can support this. It doesn't necessarily have to be the whole company, but you should, at the very least, you should know that your manager has your back on this if you step outside of your boundaries.
Yeah, I cannot agree with you anymore, and I'm really pleased the point you made about impressions and looking at that as a siloed view. Over here, in my experience when I was much younger in the industry, there was like a default metric of just CTR, just constantly shoved through click-through rates. Every report, every email, our CTR was 11%. It doesn't mean anything on its own, so I'm really glad that you've said that. Unfortunately, Ashwin, we are literally at the end of the episode. I could genuinely talk to you for like several hours, but I'm mindful that it is super late for you. So before we part ways, I would love for you to be able to share your contact details, how people can find you, connect with you, learn more about you, essentially follow you. This is your opportunity to say, here's me, follow me.
Yeah, so I'm most active on Twitter. My handle is the Copy Trail. I'm not on LinkedIn much, but if you search for me by name, you'll find me pretty quickly. I'm wearing the same cap, same black cap and white T-shirt that I'm on now. The other place you can find me is my website, thecopytrail.com. So I started a newsletter last year. Really excited, and it started off really well. I had to put it on hold because of my wife's health issues. Fortunately, she's much better now, so I'm planning to start that up again. So if you would like to learn more about how to navigate the world of writing for revenue, as I call it, sign up, visit the website. I'm planning to start a free Substack so that all the content is accessible on the site. Even if you don't want to sign up, you could go in and read it. It'll be like a little mini blog.
Yeah, that's incredible, and it's really, really pleasing to hear that your wife is recovering now. And definitely share all these links with me, and I'll put them in the show notes. And if you are listening, I truly, truly believe that followers is an arbitrary metric. It doesn't mean anything, but there are people in this industry who deserve to have their content, especially on Twitter, seen by so many more people. And Ashwin is one of them. So please go and follow him. He's incredible. Just follow him. I'm not even going to tell you. Just follow him. Engage with his content, absorb it, and you'll see why I truly, truly believe he should have way, way more followers. But that is that. Ashwin, I really, really thank you so much for staying up super late. That means a lot to me. B, making this happen. I'm going to set and record. I'm really glad that we did this. I've been looking forward to meeting you and hanging out with you for a long time. And the fact that we get to do this on recording and so many more people can get to see and hear your knowledge and wisdom really, really does mean a lot to me. And finally, if you've enjoyed this episode, I always say, please like, rate, share, and subscribe. If you don't want to do any of that, please reach out to Ashwin. Thank him for sharing his knowledge and wisdom and staying up late. And I will catch you on the next episode. Ashwin, thank you very much.
Thank you, Azeem.